Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Disco Shaman TV. Today we've got a very special guest. His name is Bryce Gertson. And Bryce, I will let you introduce yourself on this one.
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Bryce. I haven't talked about myself in a while, so I'm gonna have to do some recollection. I grew up in Canada, and for the last 4.5 years, I think, I've been living down in Peru full time, kind of pursuing the whole curanderismo, or as a lot of people know it, like shamanism practices with the plants, substances like ayahuasca, wachuma, and learning about the other plant medicines that help with things like cancers, things like other chronic illnesses, respiratory illnesses, allergic reactions, and just how these plants can be used to treat these illnesses in like a holistic manner. It doesn't mean that those are the only types of cases that we tackle. I mean, I was training with my last teacher, Wheeler Noriega Rodriguez, for how long was that? Kind of losing track of time here now. Um, Probably the last 2 or 3 years, and through the process of doing a lot of these isolation plant dietas, getting to know what's known as the spirit of the plants, to be able to know their capacities for medicine and also their capacities for being able to either go deeper or more outside of reality. Because I mean, there's various aspects to the work in terms of like the what's called brujeria or sorcery, and then there's like the curanderismo, the healer kind of doctor side of the medicine. And
Yeah.
um, inside of this, what would you say? This field, people who don't frequent the jungle and are like kind of studying everything from afar, or from like a virtual place, tend to see things in like this dualistic fashion where um somebody who there's curanderos, the doctors, and then there's the brujos, the sorcerers, or the black magicians, and everybody thinks that, oh, okay, it's either you're a curandero or it's like you're a black magician or a sorcerer. And usually, like, the more that you live here, the more that you understand that the people who are doing this kind of work are just as human as you are, and that they can have both capacities inside of themselves. And yeah, I don't really know where I was going
Yeah.
with that, but
Is that
um
is that an important? I'll bring us to our first question. Um,
mhm,
is so part of shamanism is like you speak, the curanderismo, which is the more doctor elements, and then there's the brujeria, which is the black witch magic, dark magic.
mhm.
In order to become a curanderismo, in order to practice curanderismo, do you need to be able to practice brujeria or understand it, at least be able to navigate yourself in that territory so that you know when these particular things are actually happening to you, or how to deal with it when someone else is faced attacks from brujeria
Yeah, well,
or
it's
brujos?
from my experience. It's from my experience that if you have the capacity to heal somebody, that which takes far longer to do. Like if you look at something like a window, right? It's like, how much time does it take to actually construct the window so that it stays stable inside of the frame? Or I mean, I don't really know how windows are made and how they're melted down and everything like that, but I think taking if you weigh making a window and installing it versus somebody who can just take a rock and just throw it through it and destroy it like instantly.
Yeah,
um that's kind of the analogy I wanted to use with the curanderismo and the brujeria. It's like, if you have the capacity to make one, you're also going to have the capacity to break it, but it takes far longer and is far more it's far more time intensive, far more energy intensive to be able to learn how to construct it in a way
good
that's
example. Very good
so that
example.
people can see through it,
Mm,
you know.
mm.
Hmm. Yeah,
So
so like as you're learning this method of healing for people, understanding all the various dimensions on which people experience reality, and how those aspects, non-physical and physical, can be affected, and being able to align those so that physical health and all the other axes of well-being, spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological, as well as physical, can all like benefit the person. It takes a lot of time to be able to do that, and it's very easy to just kind of take the short end of the stick and want to use it for your own, your power, your personal gain, your for acquisition of monetary wealth and things of that nature.
How
So
do you do that? How would one using dark magic or the arts of brujeria acquire power, personal gain, and monetary gain?
mm, well, well, with even using the word shaman and shamanism inside of this world, it's like, dude, like if you want to be really like tight butt about it, like etymologically and scientifically, it's like there's no shamans in Peru, really. You know what I mean? It is shamanism in the sense that like you're communicating with spirits, especially like with the plants and inside it, like and trying to align those with the people. But I mean, the real shamans are in Siberia and Mongolia. Those are like, because it properly mean it, like it means priest essentially, but it means a host of other things. But these guys are healers. They're curanderos, which is the Spanish word for healer, yeah, or brujo.
Mm.
So somebody could take that, just like you were asking for an example of like how could somebody do that kind
Yeah.
of black magic stuff to me. So I mean, you could even take that term shaman, and somebody else might come to you thinking with whatever their preconceived notion is of, oh, this is a shaman, and I'm talking to one right now. Somebody could potentially use that to kind of warp how they are being perceived, because
Mm.
even like just using the word um is false in and of itself, and if you keep running with that, then you're creating this hall of mirrors, which is like essentially just an illusion.
It's like calling yourself a
And some
doctor when you're
people
not.
could, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Okay.
this, but when I'm saying like black magic and sorcery and brujeria and all this stuff, like, man, this exists everywhere inside of the contemporary culture. It's not just like in this thing. People who are psychopaths, people who have no empathy and extort people for personal gain. There's a documentary. I don't really watch Netflix that much anymore, but one of the last things that we watched, there's a guy called the Tinder Swindler, or a
Oh
documentary
yeah.
called the Tinder Swindler, who you might have watched it. So
Yeah.
for those who might not have seen it, it's about a guy who's just a scam artist, and he basically targets these like it was specifically white women, if I remember correctly, who he basically, I mean the scam was genius. Got
Mm.
to give him credit where credit is due, but he basically got all these women to take
Did you just say
loans out
credit
of the
is
bank.
due?
I mean, credit where credit is due, man. It was
I
yeah.
thought you said credit is Jew, and I was just like scam
No.
artist Jew. Like, no, no,
I think he was a Jew actually.
yeah, because I think he
Yeah,
was.
because he was from Israel. So
Yeah,
whew.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, okay.
There we go. But yeah, he basically like extorted these women to you know, to take out loans from the bank, which they had to end up paying back. And I mean, I don't want to explain it all in this podcast because it's
Yeah.
too long. But even inside of like contemporary culture, I mean, especially with the digitization of everything, the way that you can alter your appearance, the way that you can alter your voice, the way that you can alter all these things. So like, I mean, Instagram, this little thing that happens through the black scrying mirror, if you're magically inclined to look at the screens and the monitors and the especially the cell phone, it's like you can put an image into there and you can run all these filters through it so you look like somebody completely different. And that is an aspect of casting an illusion. That's casting a spell. That is
Mm.
sorcery, essentially. That is
True.
brujeria. And then time and time again, you hear about these people on Tinder who they're talking with people and blah blah blah. And then, oh, okay, and it finally gets to the time where they're going to meet, and then they go and meet them, and they don't look anything like they did when they were,
Catfish boy.
chatting with their thumbs, essentially. Yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
then that whole catfishing thing comes into play.
Yeah.
Makeup with women, fake muscles for men, like I mean, the list is endless. And I mean, with marketing especially, um, it's everywhere. And it's just that we're using a little bit of different language. When you talk about things that
Yeah.
are esoteric, hermetic, spiritual, you're still talking English. It's just that there's a different I don't know what you want to mention. The language is altered a little bit so that you can under things in terms of like a not just a materialistic point of view. So
All right.
Yeah.
So this is a layer of black magic, which is what you're talking about is pretty much casting an illusion in order to draw people or something in. How deep
Hmm.
does black magic really get? Now you've been in the jungle for the past, um, 4, 5+ years, learning from shamans and healers. What is the depths of this black magic art? What you're talking about is it's a very physical and psychic element of it, but it's like, okay, you're over in, for example, Peru, and there's someone in China. They've never met you before. How can you affect that person with black magic? Do you know what I mean? No
Hmm.
influence, no screen connection, no phone calls, but you just know this is a person there. You got a photo of them, and you need to,
Hmm.
do something. Is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some stuff that all to me like anything is possible, but I don't like that's not really something that I study. So I haven't really put like a whole lot of effort into trying to do that, to study the mechanics of like how that operates. I'm sure there's some similarities with what you're talking about with where the people are separated and not in the same physical space, and they're trying to affect somebody else, who might be in like another country or something like that. But I think one of the ways that you can picture like how that would even happen in the first place is that if you think of like the human mind, uh, and kind of expand the concept of mind and understand that is like essentially just like a shared space, like a
Mm.
room that everybody can inhabit, and that the only thing that is separating us is, well, I mean, we have the illusion of separation. I mean, you or I could reach out to each other via these. I don't have my phone right now, or maybe I do. Yeah, here we go. You can reach out here, and then as soon as you read whatever I sent you, we can have that connection. You'll be thinking about me, and I'll be thinking
Yeah.
about you. And yeah, so like there is technology that is there, but I think the people who are a little bit more adept at practicing that kind of thing have um, relied on their own internal technology to be able to, whether they have that via like an aptitude from birth or they're just gifted in some way, to be able to like hone that skill, whether it's for good or whether it's for bad, and then they know how to tap into mind, the collective mind, as it were, and be able to affect change in that way. I can't really do that. I wish I could. That would be kind of cool, but
Yeah.
like I prefer to just have people, if they come with like a problem with trauma, or they're looking for how to get aligned with spirit in a little bit more of a tangible manner, or if they have like a just something that needs like alleviating, or an illness or memory that's bothering them, then that's where I work with the plants and just kind of have everybody, we take everybody in here like very privately, like one or two at a time, so that they get the attention that they need to be able to get to that holistic state.
Have you dealt with any demonic extractions as of yet?
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Elaborate, please.
I'm trying to think of like how many. It's probably just on like one hand that I could count them all.
Okay.
Um, yeah.
Which one stood out to
Where
you the
would
most?
the first one,
First one.
because that's when I was like, oh shit, this is actually real, you know? Um, and that was where, my eyes really like, oh, oh, the first one definitely opened my eyes to a whole new reality, and I started questioning everything I thought I knew about.
What happened?
Well, it was very early on in my apprenticeship, and I got contacted by somebody who claimed that they were being possessed by a demon. Now, at that time, I was in the mind state of like, it's probably something that's like self-created inside of the minds of people, and I still believe that I mean, I don't think it's really like an either or. Like I was talking about with the dialectic between curandero and brujo, I think you can almost like co-create it as well. Um, but I got contacted by this guy who said that he was struggling with this, and I was like, okay, well, I mean, I've heard speaking with my teacher, he said he's helped with these kinds of things before, so we had him come down, and you know, he was dealing with like a lot of suicidal thoughts and all of the stuff that he claimed was coming from an external source. But you know, when we work with people, we try to be like as non-judgmental as possible. We understand that, you know, there's a phrase that it's like it's their process, and so you don't try
Yeah.
to like change their belief system essentially, because you want them to kind of have the revelation on their own through the interface with the plant spirits.
Mm.
Because as somebody who does work with the plant spirits, you're just a vessel, you're just a channel. You're not like a guru or a guide, or, you know, if that makes sense. So the guy came down, he started his treatment via ayahuasca and plant dieta, and after about a week, he wasn't feeling very. He basically said that, you know, he was going to go home. He was planning on staying there for months, and then after like a week of treatment, said he was just going to go back home and kill himself on the following Saturday. So I mean, this story is kind of like really long.
Go on,
I
man.
don't
This
really,
is
really want to take out the whole thing, but
That's all right. It's all right. I think
yeah,
it brings the context and more of the flavor when you're able to talk about these things in an open fashion. If it's
okay,
happening,
sure,
like it's something that you should bring up.
sure. Okay, so like I said, it was really early in my apprenticeship, and we're trying to help this guy while we have like other people coming and going at the center. And at the time, you know, I'm still very early, still very young, learning about the plants, learning about the, you know, the spiritual interfaces of this work. And I had just been given like what are called in the Shipibo, it's called Lobo. Lobo means wolf in Spanish, but it means something else in Shipibo, which essentially means like a guardian or like a protector. So I was just given my first protector.
What do you mean by
Um,
lobo? Like, was it like a physical ornament or was it like a spirit? What was this?
it's like a spirit. For me,
Okay,
it came to me as like a person. It looked like a person.
okay, and
Hmm.
you can see this in your mind's eye, or you see it in the physical reality.
Well, I first saw it inside of the ceremony space, inside of an ayahuasca ceremony. He was right in my face, um, locking eyes with me, and his eyes. I'm trying to describe him. He had this like three-dimensional gaze, which was really, it shook me to my core. It was like his eyes were like white, and then there was like this layer of blue at the front of them. And when we made eye contact, it felt like he was connecting directly into my soul
Yeah.
through this, and I got put into like a little bit of like a hypnotic trance. And then this process happened where he was like merging with me, and I started having like seizures and everything like that, but I felt like very, very good and very like full of but I was also kind of like scared and kind of confused while this was going on, because I'd never experienced anything like this before. But essentially there was a bond being created, which I was not exactly searching out. It's something that happens um, as you work farther along this path. The plants kind of, I don't know whether you want to say that they use you know, archetypes that are inside of your DNA or inside of your own mind to be able to communicate with you on like a deeper level.
Mm.
But
So
that's the way that it appeared to me. This very skinny figure, who did not appear menacing at all. He felt very friendly and like, um,
yeah.
well, I mean, I don't know if even calling it a man or a woman is even true. It seemed kind of like androgynous or something like that, or genderless. But anyway, fresh after receiving the connection to this force, this Lobo, um, and then talking to the guy who was struggling with the suicidal thoughts and stuff like that. I was guiding a Wachuma ceremony for another guy. There was a bunch of people who were at the retreat at that time, but there was only one other guy taking Wachuma, and I was, you know, just guiding him, taking him to the river to swim and kind of explore a little bit, because Wachuma is a very exploratory kind of medicine that lasts for like a very long time. And this conversation happened with the guy in question as we came back from the whole Wachuma day. So the medicine was just coming down, and you know, that's when I had the conversation with him. And because I was still under the influence of Wachuma, Wachuma is a bit of a peculiar medicine because it doesn't have the same visual capacity a lot of the time inside of ayahuasca. You can have visions with it, and people can have remarkably like sometimes out of body experiences. I think I've never had that, but the only time I really experienced visions was when I was talking to this guy. Um, And as he was relaying to me his and he wasn't on Wachuma at all or anything like that. So it was just me inside of the medicine. And as he was talking about how he was feeling very suicidal, I saw his face turn into a black skull and fall off of his body, and he sat there without a head. And that's when I was like, okay, this, and I didn't really know what to do at that point because I was pretty exhausted from having done the Wachuma day with the other guest. And then I basically laid on my mat and I tried to put out like an SOS, like, is there anything that can help in this situation right now? And a short while later, the guy was talking with some other people. He was starting to feel a little bit better about, he was opening up and just kind of expressing his emotions, which we feel is part of the treatment protocol over here. You have to be able to express yourself. You have to be able to come to terms with your feelings. There's a saying inside of this work that the feeling is healing, and it's very true because um, being able to feel those things on a deeper level and understanding where they come from and why they're even there in the first place is part of the holistic understanding and the holistic modality. But anyway, after I'm talking about this or sending up like the SOS to this thing, everything starts to kind of calm down. We're about to go to bed, right? Like I'm naked, I'm ready to go to bed because I was just going to sleep in the Maloka with the people, even though they're on separate mats. But then all of a sudden, there's some weird something feels different in the air, and I look over, and again, I'm the only one on any sort of medicine. I look over at the hammock, and it appears to be swinging, and there's nobody in the hammock, but it just, and I can tell that there's nobody physically in there, but it looks like there's somebody in there. And then all of a sudden, the other two people that I'm with, they go, "Do you guys feel different now?" And everybody's kind of like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, the way the plant medicines work is it's a little different than your ordinary state of consciousness. So even though I was seeing the hammock rock back and forth, I was trying to communicate with whatever presence I felt was in the hammock. And it said, it appeared to be smoking like a mapacho, which is Nicotiana rustica. It's like it's tobacco essentially. It's the type of tobacco without any sort of preservatives or chemicals that are used in the West that is used inside of ayahuasca ceremonies. Very tasty, very strong. It's about 9 to 10 times stronger than regular tobacco. But yeah, anyway, I start trying to communicate with this thing in the hammock. I'm asking it questions like, who are you and why are you here? And are you even there? And it says, yes, I am here. And I am
In
here
English?
because you,
Was it? What
yeah,
was
because
that
it's
accent
like
like?
the accent, there was no accent. It just felt like like psychic communication.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
cool.
So it was being relayed to me. And I mean, I guess if you want to call it English, but
Yeah.
it's like mind to mind, right?
Okay.
So it was more like an energy that I was receiving. And so the answers were coming almost from like a place of intuition. So it's answering the questions in real time as I'm asking them. Who are you? You know who I am. Why are you here? I'm here for you because you called me, but I'm also here for him. And I see him point at the guy who I was talking to. And then for some reason, I just turned to him and I said, whatever's in that hammock he says he's here for me, but he's also here for you. And the guy's just sitting there, terrified. He doesn't know what that means because we're all feeling this, it feels like a medicine space all of a sudden, even though nobody except me has taken anything.
Mm.
And at that point, right after I say that to him, the figure that I had seen very recently crawls out of the hammock
This
and
is the
starts walking
Lobo?
towards, yeah, and he starts
Okay.
walking, and I was like, and I was in shock, and I was actually kind of frozen because I was like, that's the thing that came to me in ceremony that night, and I'm seeing it inside of the medicine, inside of a different medicine, but it's still there. So
It's still there,
I was
yeah.
trying to because I was so new and I didn't know how any of this worked. I was still like trying to process all of this in real time. But there's something that's going to go down because he's walking towards the guy, and I see him approach him from the rear and then start entering him. The spirit just starts going into him, and this guy just starts vomiting violently immediately.
The guy was
And
possessed.
who was
Okay.
claiming the possession, yeah. And
Yeah.
he just starts, I've never heard anybody vomit like this inside of like an ayahuasca ceremony. It's a very typical kind of part of the purge, as we say, but it was just very violent. And I kind of didn't know what to do, but all of a sudden I see the spirit's head poke out of him like this, and then his hand comes up, and then he just lifts it like that, and all of a sudden I just start singing just whatever's coming to me immediately. And there's this process going on where I'm singing to the guy, he's throwing up, and I actually had my girlfriend has it on recording because she was there at
Real.
the time, but
That's intense.
she was staying in one of the tambos, which is like one of the cabins that we had at the retreat. But I mean, the cabin was about 100 or 200 meters away, but because I was singing very loudly, and the throwing up was so loud that it woke everybody who was at the center up. And so she just woke up and then started recording on her cell phone, and you can hear what's going on from like 1 to 200 meters away. And so anyway, I keep singing, 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 singing. And as I'm doing this, I'm having these visions as I'm looking at him of this big black thing with one eye being extracted from him, and basically being uh it's screaming, and it's like struggling to stay in. It's almost like I could see its claws like struggling to just stay inside of this person. And it had just one eye right here and a big mouth that went like this. And as I'm doing it, I'm simultaneously singing and going in my mind like, what the fuck? And then I keep hearing this thing going like, no fear, no fear, no fear is allowed during this process. You cannot show it any fear at all. And so there's this multiple uh, there's a few different things going on inside of the state of consciousness. One, you're singing, and then there's the other part that's like, oh, little Brycito, that's like, what the fuck is happening here? And then there's the other one who has to like obey the instruction from the guide, essentially. Um, and so at the end, the guy, uh, I mean, on the recording, you can hear it. There's a bit of a a crescendo to the end of whatever the song was, and then there's a pause, and then all of a sudden all three of us just start cackling and laughing hysterically, because
So
we're all kind of like,
what came
what just
out?
happened?
Did you
It
did you end
what
up?
it appeared to be was like this black being with one eye and a mouth that was like this, that essentially just got put into a box and taken away.
Where did it go? So who took it in the box? The Lobo.
He did. He's like, it's my
Okay.
property. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah.
That's cool. So
Yeah. And then
so essentially,
as I'm sitting there trying to process what had just happened, and I see him to the side of me, and he's like, just so you know, I'm not your friend. It's like, I'm your protector. It's like, if you try and like get all these like, who you want to engage in some sort of like social commentary with me, or want to establish a friendship, he's like, that's not how this works. If you need me, I am there. And that's when I will show up. And I'm like, okay. And then so every time I try to like my curiosity still wants to, because it's like, this is the most interesting thing that's ever happened in my life, and I can't investigate it. You
how's
know
your
what I mean? So
relationship with the Lobo now? Like it's been
it's evolved.
it's evolved. Has that
Hmm.
fed your curiosity more? Like has it come to a different level, or is it still at that same level where it's like, no, I'm just your protector?
Yeah, it just comes to a state where it's like, you just understand that this is the way it is. And
It's business, purely
yeah,
business.
I mean, it seems, I mean, this is just my guess, but it seemed to have just like come about in the first place just from like some accumulated diets with the plants.
Mm,
These are one of the things that they give to you for making the requisite sacrifices for being able to work with them. And so just the relationship has just continued, but it's rather impersonal, if that makes sense. Like,
okay.
I still see him sometimes just when things get a little bit squirrely and I might need his help, but we don't talk that much because we don't really need to. It's more of like a feeling. So if I need him to dig something out, or if I need to call in like another plant to be able to suck something out of somebody, then that's where, you know, he shows up, and then I kind of like obey his instruction to some degree.
Can you call him in a normal state of consciousness, like as in not on any medicine or not on any not in that medicine space? Can you call him just without medicine?
Yep. There's a lot
Okay.
of times that I feel like I'm being followed, but not necessarily by somebody who's trying to do anything to me. It's just like having like a bodyguard following you
Mm.
around. But I'm sorry, what was the question again? Sorry, I had lost my train of thought for a second.
The question was, can you call the Lobo
Oh
this
yeah,
guardian spirit in your normal state of consciousness without being altered or any way?
yeah. It just comes in a lot more clear when socially the circumstances are minimal. So usually when we work with an entity like that inside of the space, like everything's very quiet, the setting is quite different. You know, a lot of the time you're in, at least in the Shipibo tradition, pardon me, I just have to burp. um, yeah, so inside of ayahuasca ceremonies in the Shipibo tradition, you're in a state where, or a setting where the space is very, you know, it's dark, it's black, and everybody's being very quiet, and the only thing that's essentially being transmitted, aside from, you know, people laughing or crying or purging, is icaros inside of the plant medicine space. So I mean, the setting, I think you could do it. It's just that the setting would have to be kind of similar in that regard, because I don't believe that like these states of consciousness that are acquired through these psychedelic plants are necessarily, like, when you take plant medicines, they're basically tuning you into what is already there. And so it stands to reason that through maybe like a practice of yoga or breath work, or in my case, I practice, you know, like a qigong and Mao Shan, to be able to tap into that state of consciousness, to be able to, you know, do things in my everyday life.
Mm.
Just to maintain like a macrospective kind of view, or
Yeah.
a macro view. Yeah.
One thing that's really helped me recently is I was doing a plant diet over here, and this ability to actively just turn your awareness on to a higher state, whereas you
Yep.
just literally all you got to do is you just say on. So I have a specific keyword for it. I call it spirituality, and I just say spirituality on. And instantly I'd go into these really intense, like psychedelic states. And it's actually quite scary at a point. It's been happening to me recently quite a lot, especially right before I go to sleep. And I literally have to wake up out of the bed and I have to say off. I have to say it, I have to turn it off because it's just so intense to handle at that point. My daughter's there, my wife's there, like my dog's outside. It's like, what the fuck? Like I'm starting to go into these altered state of consciousness, like suddenly just dipping really quick. And I'm not gonna lie, man. There is fear around it because you know how long has it been since I've been out of the jungle with you or anyone else? 3, 4 years, right?
Right.
And you come into the West and you forget that there is that world available to you. We come into this technological sub-reality, buildings and roads and gray everything and science, and it makes you sort of dull and shut that other element of your awareness off. And then what happens is
Precisely.
you're not able to train yourself in that state of awareness because it's just like, you know, you start convincing yourself that, you know what, it's one of those things. It's like, it's there. And you know what I mean? So like for me, I think that's what the fear came around. It was like, be careful because you can dip in. And those spirits that are in the jungle, those spirits that are in the mountains, fucking hell, they're right here too.
hmm
You know what I
Oh,
mean?
absolutely, man. Yeah,
And
because
and it,
they're part of something that isn't exactly materialistic, so they can travel as well as much as they please.
yeah, exactly, exactly. You feel them through. I don't know what it is. I feel like sometimes there can be a bit more of a concentration of a darker force in certain areas of the city, like yeah, in the clubbing regions where there's
hmm
specific drugs and other substances that are being taken for specific intentions. And it's almost like there is black magic going on plain in sight. Like, think about this, right, Bryce?
Yeah,
Like, you go into a club, right? And your main aim, one of your main aims in this club is to get women. So you give them this potion. This potion's alcohol. You lower the inhibitions, you lower their security networks, then you manipulate them. You tell them a story about yourself that you want them to know. Comes back to exactly what you were saying. You project this illusion onto them. And then what do? You take them home. You sleep with them. And this is not just for women. This is for males also. Women do this to males just as much. All right. Um, and you end up sleeping with them, and it's almost like you're sucking that sexual force, that psychic energy within them into yourself for your pleasure at that point. And it's like that black
exactly.
magic's going on right here in the city. It's just you can't see it, or not you generally, but people can't see it as black magic. It comes back to that thing, language.
Hmm. Yeah, well, language is a technology as well, and
Mm,
what we're talking about with developmenting or development of internal technologies, accessing these states of consciousness, or being able to see, basically using the mind like a muscle to be able to attune the filters to various things, being able to see spirits, being able to, like, if you study subjects like the occult ends up going into language, etymology, what the root words of, especially in English, actually mean, and what it is that you're saying is actually, what do we do when we write out a word? We spell it out. You spell cast, and we do that with our words in order to be able to, whether you want to do it for casting illusion or whether it's, trying to get somebody to see something in a particular way. And it's
mm.
so subtle.
Very,
It's
very
so
subtle.
subtle, but it's as subtle as the air that you're breathing, that you're probably not even aware that you're actually doing. Like, there are invisible elements to your experience, to aspects of your being that are just not regularly engaged with or talked about. And what you were talking about with men and women going to the club to kind of like play that little game, it's like we are kind of bred to do that in a way. Like, we're bred to kind of like think below the belt, think with this head rather than with this head a lot of the time, with the
Yeah,
stimulation that comes from you
yeah,
know from propaganda, essentially, because
yeah,
that
yeah,
way you're profitable, you know.
yeah. I was at
Yeah.
the club yesterday actually, and it's a dancing club, and I just saw, everyone. I had these moments where I go on the dance floor, and I lose myself in the dance. It's like almost tribal. But then I go have these
Hmm.
moments where I'm just standing at the bar and I'm just watching everyone, just looking, just observing, just like, wow, fuck man, I'm in the Matrix. I feel like I'm in GTA. GTA when you go in the club
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then you're just looking around and then you're just looking at the world and just like, wow, man, like I have that perception of it as a game. But then I saw like I watched this lady that she was dancing and she was like shaking her butt. And there's this guy there, he's drinking and he's liking it. And she's almost like attracting this guy. And the guy's coming closer and closer. And I don't know why. David Attenborough's voice is playing in my head. You know how he's like, yeah, you know how he's like looking at the baboon and he's like, the baboon lures
Yeah.
the male counterpart in with his finest booty. That's what I
Yeah.
thought. I was like, fuck, bro, we're no different to animals, man. You know what I mean? Like, that's what
Yeah, yeah.
animals do in the jungle, bro. Like, when the lion walks with her ass out, trying to attract the male lion. I was like, bro, this bitch doing the same shit. You know what I mean? Like, she ain't doing anything
Yeah,
no
yeah.
different, man. Just because she wearing a
Yeah,
fucking Armani suit or a Hermes belt doesn't mean she's so advanced. It's like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
you're a fucking animal at the core of it, bro. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, yeah. Oh man, when you mentioned David Attenborough, it's like I knew exactly what you were gonna say before you even said it. And it's like, but in my mind, I was like thinking of it like, David Attenborough, because he's in an 18 plus club, right? So all of a sudden he can use rated R language. He's like, the dumb bitch with the fat ass is attracting the man who's also stupid, and to come over and to do the dance with him so that he can get laid and he can tell his friends. Yeah.
dude, that sounded like Jordan Peterson.
Oh, really? Oh,
I'm serious.
maybe he could be the new David Attenborough.
Imagine that, man. Imagine them on a panel. It's like Jordan Peterson, David Attenborough, someone else who's pretty fucking up
Who's
there.
the guy who sings that song that's like, I see roses red?
Ah, bro, you sound like in Scooby-Doo, man. I see skies are blue. That one, right?
Yeah, that
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know
Red
what his name is.
roses too. I know what you're
Yeah,
talking
just
about. I
get
think
all
he's
those three to have the like philosophize.
yeah. Have like them on a panel and just like judging
Yeah.
everyone in the club. Fuck that. I'd watch. I'd pay for that. I'd Patreon that shit straight up,
Yeah.
bro. You
Oh,
know what I
dude,
mean?
yeah. You're gonna have to trademark that before somebody like picks up that idea and actually suggests it to them and they actually do it. That'd be hilarious.
Time will come. Yeah, wild
Yeah.
man. So let's get
Count
on
me
to
in.
question two.
Oh yeah, that was number one, eh? Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
So
Uh-huh.
you mentioned dieta, plant dietas.
Hmm.
Okay. Run me through the process just for the people that don't really know about what a dieta is. It's a completely new concept for them. And then go a bit more
Hmm.
advanced on how people, living in the city who are particularly interested in spirituality and connection to plants or animals, how can they begin this process? Not everyone has access to shamans, teachers who can initiate this process for them. How can we
Hmm.
access our own inner shaman, our own inner healer, that inner innate wisdom to be able to connect with these plants? It's a two-part
Hmm.
question.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. So the first part is explaining what the plant dieta process actually is. So it's absolutely crucial inside of this line of work. Uh, all of the tribes of the Amazon in Colombia, Peru, uh, Ecuador, Brazil, like a lot of these tribes all kind of have like a similar methodology. There are some variances and stuff, but basically there's a where the similarities lie is in the initial philosophy of the spirits are living beings that possess a spirit, or in Spanish they say they have a madre, or like a mother. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a feminine spirit, but it's something that lives within the plant, like a form of consciousness that can be transmitted to you if you work with it, this other aspect of nature, intimately. And that is essentially what the process of a plant dieta is. It's plant spirit medicine healing. So in the case of if you have like a chronic illness, I'm just trying to think of one off the top of my head. um I'll think of, okay, so we had this woman come to the center where I was working at with Wheeler, and she had experienced, some health problems with, especially to the point where she had to go to the doctors to get spinal surgery. And after receiving the spinal surgery, she had she was experiencing like numbness around here up into her, like basically her pinky finger and part of her ring finger and her, I believe it was her right hand, were just like she had nerve damage there. She couldn't feel anything. And so like when we were doing our intake, we were just running over her history of like traumatic events that she may have experienced either as a child or as an adult. And the reason that we ask those things is because a lot of those memories can oftentimes have impacts on how physical illnesses manifest inside of people. And so we want to know those types of things in order to be able to address those energies when they come inside of the space, so that they can be cleaned, or they can be aligned, or they can be purged, or they can be, whatever happens to need to be done in that space. So
Yeah.
this woman was put on a diet of a plant called Renikia. I don't know the scientific name right off the top of my head, but that was the plant dieta that Wheeler had prescribed to her.
How
And
does
so
how does the shaman normally understand what plant spirit or plant medicine to prescribe to a particular person? Like, does he have a book
mhm,
where it contains all this information, or how do they know? How do they make that
yeah.
diagnostic?
Well, in the same way that they work in the space and they're working through intuition, and that's how the plant spirit songs, the Icaros, kind of like manifest themselves. They're not really like um, pre-rehearsed or pre-programmed, at least if they're doing it correctly.
Mm,
It's kind of like an improvisation that's based on like intuitively what kind of energies they're picking up in the space at that time. And so in the time that's like one-on-one with the client, that is also where you're trying to, kind of like soften your perception a little bit and try and do the same thing in ceremony, where you're lowering the inhibitions of your traditional ego kind of self, so that, okay, hey, plant spirits, of all of these plant spirits that I've worked with over the years, can you kind of guide me as to given what this person is saying, what they want assistance with, what plant spirit would be of the most utility to this person in this time and in this place. And so it's kind of engaging that sort of dynamic regularly. And
Okay.
so Wheeler, it came to the decision to put this woman on Renikia, and Renikia has an unimaginably vast amount of healing properties with it. It can reprogram the cells of it can help the mitochondria function better. It can help with wounds. It can help with arthritis and rheumatism. It can help with like just a gamut of health benefits that can come from here. It's anti-inflammatory. It helps with just organ function and all of these things. So he goes, okay, you're just going to do that one. And then as I was running through the list of things that it helps with, that's when she mentioned about the spinal surgery. Oh, I had a spinal surgery and I don't feel anything here in my hand. And about 2 weeks into the diet, she was making herself some tea in the kitchen. And after putting the hot water in the cup, she didn't even realize that as she was doing other things, she accidentally put her pinky finger in the hot water and she went, ow. And then she went, holy shit. Oh my God, I have feeling in my hand now, or back in my pinky. And like, that's the kind of thing that that's the kind of properties that these plants have and that people can experience with them. They're very, and the way that the healing actually works is, they do things on like a holistic level. We live in a contemporary Western culture, or we're from a contemporary Western culture where we want things instantly, instant gratification. Oh, I'm bored, I want to just watch a TV show. Oh, okay, yeah, Netflix, boom. Oh, okay, I got some pain right here, I'll just take a pain pill and it'll go away.
Right.
Or I'm horny and my wife's away and I'll just jerk it to porn or whatever. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
boy.
It's like we're going over the whole gamut here. So that's the culture that we come from. The model here, especially inside of a medical context, is something that takes anywhere from like a couple weeks to sometimes months at a time um, to be able to align and help heal effectively. So this woman's process, I think she was doing it for about 3 weeks. Um, and yeah, the feeling in her hand came back. She was able to do some deeper work on herself. I wasn't there for the last week of her stay, so I didn't really get a chance to talk to her more intimately about her experience, but she left very happy. And let's see, yeah, so that's essentially the plant dieta in the context for healing. Like I said, all the tribes, the Hunikuan, the Yawanawa, the Shipibo, Kanibo, the Mestizos, all of these, and I'm leaving out a bunch of them, the Shuar in Ecuador, and all of these tribes use these plant medicine dietas to get to know more intimately the spirits of these plants and what they can assist with.
So
And
these plant spirits fundamentally have a personality that you can engage with. Is it something that people can actually communicate with? How does it work?
mm-hmm.
Is
Yeah, well, a lot of it happens inside of when you're doing the dieta, you're trying to isolate all forms of stimulation, be it um, social, dietary, because basically when you're doing this, like we are multi-dimensional beings, and it's not like some crazy. I'll try and simplify it a little bit. So we live in a couple different realms simultaneously. Right now, as we are engaged in the social realm. I'm listening to you, you're listening to me, and we're caught in this like feedback of you say something and then I respond a certain way and vice versa. And that's actually the primary uh, the primary function of our perception, is to be able to interact with the social world, and it conditions the way that we want to be appealing to others. A lot of the time, if we're over at an event, you don't just like walk into a party and just like shit your pants because you think it's funny. At least most people don't. And
that'd be pretty
anyway,
funny.
yeah, that would be. I'd be laughing, but then I'd be like, dude, like, okay, get out, bathrooms that way. And yeah, so there's the social aspect of our interface with reality. There's like our psychological and emotional perceptions, how we're feeling, what we think, and those kinds of things that like make up your day-to-day identity, your name, and your just how you get along over here. And then there's the physical reality, obviously, where you have your body, And then there's also the spiritual aspect, which whether or not you want to believe it, it's like it's there and it ain't going anywhere anytime soon. So
Mm.
anyway, so by engaging in a process of this plant dieta, you're limiting the amount of input that's coming, especially from the social atmosphere. You can do social dietas, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just they come with their own challenges, but you're minimizing the amount of social influence that's coming into your perception. You're cleaning up your diet, because like when you, especially most of these traditions ask you to abstain from sex, abstain from salt, abstain from oil, and basically anything that's like really tasty and very satisfying on a certain level. So you have to eat like a lot of these bland foods. That's not really fun, but the rewards are definitely worth it. And so you're pushing down some of the satisfaction that you're getting from the physical realm, the social realm. You're trying to keep your thoughts inside of the psychological and emotional realms kind of fixated on the spiritual. And so the spiritual, as a result of, you know, being it's kind of like when somebody is born blind and their hearing is extraordinarily good, or vice versa. The same rule kind of applies. Like as you minimize these other inputs, the other, you know, the psychological, emotional, and the spiritual components expand, and so you can kind of gauge like where you're at on those tiers. And so that's where you'll start to have like more tangible like uh, interactions with these plant spirits, whether it's in, sometimes it's in the physical world, because sometimes like you can see them, but a lot of the times they come and teach you in your dreams, or they kind of like have some influence over like the thoughts and emotions that you're having during the day, as part of like trying to get down to the root reason of what it is that you're seeking, and to, like whether it's for healing or whether it's for growth or expansion or anything like that. So um it's very hard to kind of put into words like what the process actually entails, and so it's better to just experience it, and then you'll be like,
Mm.
okay, that's, I mean, you've done it, so you know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as the second component to that question of how can people experience that in the city if they don't really have access to like many plants, it's like you know, there's plants where you live, and you know, we have been conditioned to a large extent, I would argue, that we shouldn't turn to plants because they're dirty and they grow in the ground or whatever, but you should buy
Who the fuck says
pharmaceuticals, you
that?
should trust these companies. That's
Who said
just, I
that?
mean,
Is that actually a saying that they grow in the ground and they're dirty?
well, I mean, I'm probably making stuff up at that point. But, I mean, I'm not making stuff up that they grow on the ground and stuff, but it the reliance on the medical system as it's instantiated seems like you're always told to go to the doctor before like somebody who's like a holistic health practitioner, because that's
Yeah,
hocus pocus, that's, you know, their quackery or whatever
yeah,
other kind of demeaning insult you want to throw on these people. And you know,
yeah,
my both of my parents are chiropractors, and
yeah.
it never ends, man, right?
Uh,
So it's like, but you see the tangible results and you're like, well, I'll just let the experience kind of speak for itself. But anyway, if people want to experience this in inside of a city, obviously it's probably better. I mean, like I feel kind of weird like telling people what to do from all the way over
well, you're
here,
sharing your
but
experience, and if they resonate with that experience, then they can take part of it. Um,
mhm,
and that's a form of guidance. You know, if you're experiencing a particular reality which you found benefit in your psychology, your spirituality, your emotionality, and you're sharing it, and if someone resonates, they resonate. If they don't, fuck off.
mhm, yeah. So I have had people ask me that before, and I think it's good to be close by plants and diet plants that actually grow fairly close to you, so that you can harness like a better connection with them. Go and
Mm.
visit them, go and visit them, go and talk to them, go and pray with them, go like get to know the plant on every level of its being, because in the same way that you have, you know, your own multifaceted aspect of experience, it definitely has its own multifaceted aspect of experience as well. Now I'm trying to be a little bit careful about personifying them too much and saying that they have thoughts and emotions and personalities, and that certainly feels to be the case, but again, it's like we're interpreting that through our filtration mechanism as well. But like if you're doing it for just being able to connect with nature on a deeper level and connect with your own spirit, your own soul, it's definitely like a good method to go by, but you just want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that you're doing it in a way that's safe, whether somebody is overseeing it or just getting comfortable with the method firsthand, so that you actually know what you're doing and you don't just like take, because a lot of it has to do with the intention. Like, why are you doing it? Are you doing this for yada yada yada? And the more that you have your intention in mind, the more that you know, because inside of the Shipibo mythology, they talk about this aspect called Shitana, which is kind of like the darker side, or the magic element of the plants. All of the plants, my teacher would argue, have their Shitana. So in the case of something like tobacco can be quite addictive, and that would be the Shitana aspect of tobacco. While it's also like an amazing medicine for grounding and helping with, you know, allergy responses and a myriad of other things. And then like with marijuana, obviously the people who smoke all the time and can't get by without using it, that would be an aspect of the Shitana of the marijuana plant or the cannabis plant. So all these plants have them. It's like it doesn't mean that it's necessarily good or bad. It's just like it's just one of those components that, in looking at things very objectively, that you have to take into account.
Yeah.
And so usually the reason we suggest that you have oversight from somebody who understands the plant world, understands like when Shitana is manifesting itself, and that, you know, because like when Shitana comes, you're not really going to feel it a whole lot, because it, you know, as the plant like roots itself in you spiritually, it can have an effect on your psychology with or without you knowing it. And so somebody who can take you into ceremony at least semi regularly, I mean, it's not absolutely necessary. I don't want to make it seem like a panacea. You need somebody else to tell you what to do, but it's just, if you want to do it in like a safer way with, you know, I would argue that the spectrum of Shitana is different for each plant as well. But somebody who can identify when that type of energy is manifesting itself, and who can clean it and make sure that, you know, you're getting especially if you're trying to heal, that the healing component of that plant is continually called forth. Yeah. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but
yeah. I mean, if I could add to that, the way that I see it is there's levels of connection to these plant spirits, these plant consciousnesses that one can go through. And you know, people who are living in the city who want to do this, who want to connect to plant spirits and go deeper into that world, they could also consider the idea of going at it in baby steps. So doing 1 week long dietas rather than 3-4 month long dietas, where, you know, these people have to factor in that they got work, they got all these other commitments, jobs, and left, right, and center. Whereas like when you're doing these 1 week dietas, it can be very light, it can be very subtle, very, very soft on the psyche. And you know, a lot of the West is in a form of escapism through, I mean, not even a lot of the West, I would say a lot of the whole world is in a specific form, slightly engaging in escapisms. And that can be through food, that can be through tobacco, that can be through weed, clubbing, going out. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think necessarily escapism has its own function. Maybe we're not ready at that point to go deep and just see the demons that lurk within there, or not even just the demons, but the light, the gods, the positive things that lurk in there. Maybe we're just not ready for that. And for that, we do need something. We need a mechanism in our psyche to be able to escape temporarily, right? So,
well, also escapism is kind of fun. Like I'm not, I don't want to, like, again, like with talking about like intention, it's like, why are you doing? Are you just trying to do it because there's some stuff that you don't want to deal with, or are you just looking to have a celebration, or just kind of like enjoy? Because there's nothing wrong with being entertained. There's nothing wrong with like going out and just, you know, feeling like having some fun and mixing some things up, right? Like that's actually very healthy. It's just that if you're only living inside of that world and you still haven't expressed to your girlfriend what's bugging you about her behavior that she might not necessarily be conscious of, that is actually like, it feels like it's wearing down in your psyche, and you need to, and it's making you resentful, and you want to have that expression. If you're doing that, if you're doing those kinds of, you know, the going out and whatever other escapism that you have, and you're continually pushing that away, it's not exactly going to
true. So it's more like,
outcome, but
So it's more like how much you delve into escapism.
Yes.
Yeah. So the layers to it. Yeah. Now, but that's one thing I found very, very beneficial for myself is doing these 1 week long ones, 2 weeks, just keeping it very low key, keeping it simple, doing your day-to-day things. And it just really helps me with being able to still instill that connection, that yearning to learn from these masters.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this really wise medicine woman that told me that the plants that you need to work with will grow around you. It's not that
Yeah.
you go out looking for them, that these plants will come for you. And I was like, fuck, man, that's crazy. I actually had a dream about this one tree that kept on coming to me. It was a very specific tree. I never found it. I felt like I needed to go on an expedition to look for it, like go around the bush, because I used to hike quite a lot in a certain area. I never found that actual that tree, but then I found other ways that these plants were actually communicating, and it was almost like there was like a symbolic language going on. I saw
Mm-hmm.
this one
What do you know what it looked like?
yeah, I know what it looked like. It came to me in a dream.
Okay, what did it look like?
It had like these very specific leaves. They're like these little sharp, jagged leaves. And I remember exactly how it came to me in the dream. I was sleeping and this thing just popped over me like this. And it was
Mm.
almost, and it was like, shh, shh. It was making a sound very specific to an Icarus
Okay.
starting. And I knew what
Yeah.
it was. I knew, fucking, you've been in that world for a while. You understand the call. You get the fuck up, you
Mm-hmm.
start the car, and you go looking for a fucking plant. That's what you gotta do. Even if the missus
Yeah,
asks you,
yeah.
she's like, what are you doing? You're like, no, I've been summoned. I gotta go. No, but I never ended up finding that specific plant. Maybe it wasn't about a diet or something. Maybe I just potentially needed it in my life at that point. Maybe it was coming through for a specific purpose. But this is the interesting thing that I'm trying to understand. Does every person contain a shamanic self, or is it a specific type of breed of people they're gifted with this skill, this talent? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm,
let
yeah.
me elaborate. Let me elaborate a bit more on that. You go out, you see an NPC, you know, just an average 9 to 5 working day-to-day job, no experience with this other reality. Does that individual, Ethel on the checkout, or does that individual contain within them a shamanic self? Someone that they can initiate to become a much more powerful. I mean, I guess they do, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they can
Yeah,
actualize into a much more
I know what
powerful.
you're getting at.
Yeah. What's your
Yeah.
perspective?
Yeah, I think anybody can absolutely attain that, if shamanism is something that you want to engage with. But here's the thing, it's like initially you have to have like an interest in it.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
if you're focused on the superficial, I mean, we have, far too many plastic shamans for my liking around who fixate
I like that saying, plastic
on
shaman.
the layer.
I
Yeah,
really
yeah.
like
Well,
that.
I
That's
mean, there's like
dope.
a layer. There's
Did you
like,
come up with that?
they wear.
Did you come up
No,
with
no.
that?
No. I think that's like kind of a popular term in these
Okay.
kinds of circles and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I mean, it's plastic in the sense that it's hollow. It's more about the costumes and the community and the reputation, or this is just things that literally have nothing to do with the actual practice and people who are doing it, from a genuine place. Because especially in the West, it's like, you hear a lot of these people who are changing their names and they sell a bunch of these fancy products, and like they're more invested in the marketing aspect of it and the colonial kind of mindset that's attached to it. Because like prior, real shamanic practice entailed, like, obviously you have to have like a trade for if you're seeking like help from a healer or a brujo. It's like in today's culture we have like the money exchange, because that's easily what we can use the most for survival. You can cover your food, you can cover your rent, you can cover, maybe even your kids' college tuition or whatever, if that's still a thing in the future that people are gonna be using anyway. But there was still like people would you would have to charge for something as the service provider that you would actually need in order for the treatment to actually be effective, because there's levels, again, like with understanding the levels that are at play with a treatment protocol like this. It's like you're engaging um, the unconscious levels of both parties. If
Mm,
they just come over here and they just want a treatment for free, which is a very pervasive problem, it's like they don't want to understand that the payment is actually there to protect the client. Because if you come to me and you want the treatment for free and you don't pay me and we get going with the treatment, it's like I'm going to want something from you unconscious on an unconscious level. And so that might create some sort of like distortion inside of like
mm,
how the process is actually going to unfold. And I mean,
true.
you've probably been witness to this,
Mm.
being that you've been back and forth through numerous times. And where was I going with this? I think I kind of got yeah, but Pete, yeah, we were talking about plastic shamans and
Plastic
stuff like that. I
shamans.
mean, it's part of. I mean, it's really like any sort of industry. You're going to have people who know what they're talking about and who know how to carry out the methodology in a correct fashion, and then you're going to have people who are a little bit more like, I'll say the right things and I'll change my name to Love Butt 69 or whatever the fuck it is, and then I got a website and I got the whole marketing thing, and that's my business, right? And then you'll get the people who actually know the history, people who know the practices, people who understand like the process of having it work. And it you know um there's a fine difference, and you kind of have to be, you know the plastic ones, I would argue, are brew hosts, because they're again casting that illusion of I'm a because that word shaman is so like overused and taken out of context with as much as, trying to think of another term,
What if you could
spirit,
bring
right?
what if you could bring light back to that name? Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of this happens in the West, like the word spirituality. It's got a lot of negative connotations attached to it now, and certain people don't like to hear it. But my take is this: it's like, what if you have the ability to actually bring positivity, bring integrity back into the name shaman? Because it's being thrown around right now. It's being thrown on
Mm-hmm.
corn chips. It's everywhere.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
what if you
Yeah.
actually stick to it and you're like, you know what? I'm gonna change this around through my actions, through
Mm-hmm.
how I deal, through the integrity that I put in, through
Yeah.
how I teach or showcase the lessons of shamanism and shaman. Because what else? What other words are you going to really use? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
get the egotistical aspect about it, that you want it
Yeah.
for specific power structure, power hierarchy, but it's like, then how do you define it
Mm-hmm. You
when
define
it's
it by
needed to
your
be?
actions, because your actions are
Yeah.
actually like a communication tool, right? So if you want to act from a place of integrity, you act from a place of integrity. Um, I mean, I don't want to put myself on a pedestal or anything like that, because I'm still very, I have a lot more to learn on this path and stuff. But that is the reason that I only have 1 to 2 people here at a time, is because I
Mm,
don't want to overextend because I'm aware of where my limitations are. I know
okay.
what I can do and what I can't do, because oftentimes I get reached out to people and I don't have the capacity to help them. So I put them in touch with other people who I know they can benefit from. So I create like a like
That's
a
awesome.
bit of a network
That's
where,
awesome. Yeah.
okay, this guy's good. He's got a phenomenal reputation. He's dealt with this problem I don't know how many times, and he's solid. I trust him. Oh, you got this problem. Okay, so this guy over here, like I won't be able to help you, but this guy over here has, he's been doing it for X number of years. He's looked after this. If anybody knows how to help you, it's going to be that guy. So it's like, at the same time that I'm able to engage with the practice of where I'm competent and where I have my own capacity to affect positive change in people's lives, I also have, I direct traffic where they will gain, where these people who I can't help or who I feel I can't help will acquire the most benefit. Because I mean, that's humility, that's integrity to me anyway. So
Mm,
I'm doing my best. I'm definitely not perfect, right? Because there's always like little things that happen. I still make mistakes. I still, I'm, even though I'm involved in spiritual work, sometimes my ego still flares up and I think I can tackle things that I can't, and maybe I get a little bit overzealous and stuff. But again, it's like, if the way to, for anybody listening, if you want to make sure that the person that you're going to be working with in a shamanic capacity is in integrity, see how transparent they are about mistakes they've made in the past, and how in line they are with the aspects that make them human. Because for anybody to first of all think that because you're a healer or a shaman or whatever fake fucking English word you want to put at the start of your name to establish your identity, it's like, but how human are you? If you're not human, then you're an imposter. You know what I'm saying? If they talk in a way that puts themselves above other people, then that's probably not somebody that you want to work with.
So
Likely. But
so if you were to take the mask off, you'd be this exact same person that you're showing the screen now.
yeah, exactly. Oh, no makeup, by the way.
No makeup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like our center, I don't know if you really want to call it a center. We just have people come down to our house, and like I said, 1, 2 people at a time. We're calling our place down to earth, because inside of spirituality, any sort of spiritual discipline, whether it's like, Western magic or um or occultism, ayahuasca shamanism, or just shamanism period, just anywhere where there's affiliations with like spiritual concepts, we've been exposed to like a lot of people who are not balanced inside of inside of their experience of their life, and that's where they can kind of get carried off with, I mean, literally floating off into the astral plane if you want, and not
Mm.
having their feet on the earth, because ideally you want to have your head in the clouds where you're connected with spirit and with higher forces, but you also have your feet on the earth so that you can actualize, you can manifest, you can basically
Mm.
do productive things with your
Beautiful.
time. So
Very
we call
beautiful.
our place down to earth, because I mean, we're very down to earth. We're, the way I'm speaking to you right now is the way I'm going to be speaking with everybody who comes through here. It's just like we don't have any made up names. We just, we get to business. We
Mm.
get down to what are you looking for, and how can I help you, kind of deal.
Mm.
It's not really like, you know don't get caught up in, um I don't even know the word. So yeah,
Cool. Well,
superficiality, I guess.
we'll bust on to question 3, and then I want to ask your perspective on psychedelic integration. So you have a lot of
Hmm.
people that go out into Peru or go out into these medicine circles, and they have these intense, crazy experiences of the other realms and other intelligences and entities, and then they come back to the day-to-day world. How is it that they need to bridge this gap in between the two, and how important is it to do psychedelic
Hmm.
integration?
Yeah. Okay. Well, integration, it's like, what is integration? It's taking the lessons learned inside of an altered state of consciousness, or just through whatever experience has presented itself to you, and you're taking the information from that, and transforming it, and basically engaging in a process of alchemizing it with your being, so that you can weave it into the fabric of your everyday reality, right? So um integration, it is kind of more of a Western concept, before, like, and part of it is just that inside of these kinds of linguistic models over here in Peru and stuff, like talking about spirits and all of this kind of stuff, it's very normal, right? It's part of the lexicon, it's part of everyday life. When somebody talks about that, we don't write them off as crazy, or, oh, maybe they're mentally ill and they need to get locked up in an institution or something like that. But where we come from, that is not the case. Like we were talking about, there's a bit of an over reliance, not with everybody. Obviously, there's holistic health practitioners down there who are very, they're doing good work, who understand this concept of, integrating and, and, taking the, I'm trying to think of an example right here on the spot. So you, let's say that you want to be a better partner to your spouse, and you go down and you have this ayahuasca experience where you become your wife or your husband, and you can see things from their perspective. Part of the integration process maybe, and I don't feel right talking and telling people how or what they should integrate, right? That's for them to decide, and that's for them to carry out in their life, because that's how they will achieve that power, that internal power, that aspect of real shamanism, if you get right down to it. If they can see from the perspective of their spouse and they understand that, you know, they're trying to be a better partner, they might call that experience into their into their reality field a little bit more frequently, to be able to understand if they're having an argument or something like that, to just kind of like take a pause and being able to gauge what is it the other person's actually saying here, and trying to understand from their perspective in a little bit more of a clear fashion what it is that they're actually asking for, and not
Mm.
maybe, and that it goes beyond just listening to what they say, right?
Feeling what's
um
underneath, what their need
exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's just like an example that I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously there's like integration in it in itself is a very big subject. Yeah.
How do you integrate people who are having experiences? This is a very common experience in psychedelics, which is people have
Hmm.
this experience of them being a god, that they're godlike, not the god, a
Hmm.
god.
Hmm.
How does one integrate God experiences in psychedelic realms into the daily world when you're working at a
God
checkout?
experiences. Okay. Well, if I was to help somebody with integration on a subject like that, I would have to kind of talk to them on a deeper personal level, kind of take an assessment of like what's some of the territory that's circling around the feeling of God. Like, are you feeling like God because you feel disempowered? Are you feeling like God because you want to
Mm,
feel more than man or more than other people? Like,
mm,
and that's kind of the process of integration, is like understanding, because I've had the experience of, you know, feeling like I'm Jesus in ceremony and stuff, but you know, like in real time when it's happening, it's like, wow, like look at me, look at my ego thinking I'm important and that I'm the second coming of whatever, right? So it's you know.
well, I'll give you a second perspective on that.
Hmm.
What if you were? What if you were a prophet, but not the prophet, a prophet? A prophet who is
Hmm.
going to deliver a specific message to the specific cohort of people. That can only be two people. It could be one person. But to them,
Hmm.
their whole reality, their whole life's been changed. Because a lot of people have these
Hmm.
experiences in psychedelics where they feel like they're Jesus, they're the prophet, they're the chosen one. And my take on this is what if you are? What if life is so great that everyone gets to be a prophet? Everyone gets to be a god? And
Hmm.
your message, your art, your purpose on this planet is so unique that only you can deliver it like a master. It is only you who can give that to the world. Not not in an egotistical way, but in a fucking masterful way. Just like a car manufacturer who's creating a one of a kind McLaren, handmade, all the
Hmm.
tools, everything, he's doing it. No one else is as good as him. He's the one who can do it. But it's like, it's just a McLaren. There's Lamborghinis, there's Bugattis,
Yeah.
there's all these other different cars out there. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
what if that
absolutely.
was the case in your art, whatever you're doing, healing, integration work, ceremony? What if you were Jesus?
Yeah.
The archetypal
Well,
it.
yeah. So I'll probably just speak in a little bit of a monologue now to try and sort it out in my own mind. So like if I the way like the being of Jesus, it doesn't really sit well with me anymore, because I see it as like a I see Christianity, especially, even though there's beneficial aspects of it, that it's a bit of a mind control mechanism. You know, Jesus, or he was a shepherd, right?
Yeah,
Herd the
yeah, yeah.
sheep, get put up on the cross while everybody's berating you, and don't fight back and then after you're dead, that's when you'll achieve, you know, salvation or whatever. It's like, okay. Anyway, um, that being said, I do not want to disrespect anybody who wants to follow that path, because it is a path, but if I was feeling like, here's where I feel. I like when I get in touch with my own divinity, when I had that experience of feeling like that godlike state, I felt like essentially, okay, well, if I'm God, then what do I want to do with my life? Because I can do anything, right? What do you want to do? What do you want to align yourself with? And I was like, I want to be doing this work.
Relationships.
And I just did everything in my power, whether people were, you know, I had a lot of people who were convincing me to stay in Canada, or that I had lost my mind, or that I had gone off the deep end.
NPCs.
There was people actually inside of this particular, I don't know if you want to call it an industry or field, that were trying to shy me away from it. And they go, no, 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 you're not gonna understand. You don't understand what's going on and stuff. So, but I acted like I was God in a way. I don't like saying it like that though. It's just I got in touch with my own divinity in such a way where I understood that I was at least an aspect of God. Like there was a spark of that in me, the same way that there's a spark in every individual and every molecule and atom that's in the universe, right? And I was just like,
Yeah.
okay. And then in that moment, I kind of came to I understood that death was not necessarily what we're conceiving of it as. Like it's, inside of that dualistic model of, oh, you're living and then you're dead. It's like it's just like a transitionary phase, and you're always in this. You're never really static, right? You're always in the state of movement. So given that, and that you're going to die, and that you're going to lose everything, you're going to lose all your family, everybody you love, and everything you love is eventually going to decay at some point in time. What do you want to do with your time? And I was like, I just want to do this. So that's kind of the way that I integrated that part. Like there was a lot of bumps in the road. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like a full, oh, I just made the decision and and then everything just turned out all hunky dory. It still turned out pretty good. But there was some trials and tribulations that nobody except for me was going to have to experience in order to be able to learn those hard lessons and the reality. And it's why that we try to be as down to earth as possible with
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
but at the same time, it's like with if you do happen to be a prophet, if you do happen to have this like messianic, I mean, it's called the Messiah complex when you think you're Jesus and you have to like start telling everybody else about it. It's like, okay, well, like pretend that you are Jesus, but it's like, what are you going to do? Because again, talking is I'm the Messiah. It's like, who gives a fuck? Like, so is everybody. So like, are
I
you?
was walking my dog the other day, and this lady came out of a house, and we have a good conversation, man. And then suddenly she starts talking about religion,
Uh-huh,
and this is like 7 in the morning. Like there's mist in the air. My dog's just doing a thing, and you don't want to think too much. And she
mm-hmm.
just starts trying to convert me into her religion, man. She just starts to tell me like about how the only way to salvation to heaven is through Jesus and through God and through the Christian practice. And there was a moment where I got a bit triggered. I was like, man, you know what? No, that's not the only way, bro. Go diet some plants, do this. I felt my ego come up, but then I was like, wait, Hammad, listen, don't. She's not trying to convert you. She's showing you her internal dialogue that she needs to perpetuate and project that onto the world in order to feel safe that she will get into heaven. She doesn't fucking believe in it. No. She just needs to convince someone else. And if she convinces someone else and someone else believes that, oh, okay, this is the only way, that makes her believe like, oh, maybe now I'm a good person and I will go to heaven. And I was like, whoa, you are stuck, woman. You are stuck.
Mm-hmm.
I got out of there, bro. I was like, nah, I ain't gonna listen to
Mm-hmm.
this stuff early in the
No, but
morning, man.
that's a very grounded way of being able to like gauge something like that, because you're able to take the time to not just go like, shut up, bitch, and fuck off. It's like you can actually see like where the person is coming from, and and you know um again, if you have that sort of messiah complex and you want to be able to tell people about it because you feel like you'll get something from it, is the thing that nobody mentions. Is like you're telling people that because you want something, right? If you One of the things that is poorly done in the world right now is having boundaries, right? And a lot of us, myself included, I've been in this position I don't know how many times, and it's very embarrassing to admit, where you see somebody who's struggling with something and they're not asking for help, and me, goes, I know what you need, and you got to do this, you got to do that, when it's completely uninvited, and it
Yeah,
is actually very abusive,
I know what you
and
mean.
will,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean,
Oh,
if you want to actually help those people, I mean, here's the thing, like even with this plant medicine healing work, like you can't help anybody unless they actually want the assistance, unless they want your
Steve.
help, unless they want
Yeah.
your input,
Mm,
if and that's the beautiful thing about something like YouTube or like these other educational platforms, is because it's like it's set up in a way where if you want to get the answer to something, you're searching for it, and if you don't like, and it's like I don't really understand the whole bad mouth thing, and just, I mean, I love trolling. I don't do a whole lot of trolling, but I love like sometimes trolling is like an art form, like but I don't understand like a lot of these like vitriolic comments that are just solely um to kind of prove that I'm intellectually superior to whoever, like especially like online. It's like, dude, there's other ways, that there's better ways to be spending your time, and I understand where it comes from, and but
Yeah.
it's like, if you don't like what's on the channel, just change the fucking channel. Like you have that again. It's
Yeah.
like you if you have that power inside of yourself, you can actualize it.
Yeah, I like to say that the reason why the world is the way that it is today, all the damage, the chaos, the suffering, the pain, is because simply this, that people don't want to change at a collective level. There is a
Mm-hmm.
deep yearning and enjoyment that the human species likes in chaos, in strife. Because if they really intended, everyone intended, or a specific group of people intended to change, it would change. Or either we'd move into a
Mm-hmm.
parallel reality where that change has already happened, shift our consciousness there. But it's like we don't like it. Sometimes it's like, I feel this come up in a lot of my own relationship, and I see this with certain clients that I deal with in my relationship coaching practice. Is we'll talk all about all the arguments and struggles that they're having at home, and then towards the end consensus will be, but I enjoy it, I like it. And this is one
Mm-hmm.
of the things that I learned, is that human beings fundamentally have needs. There's needs of certainty, there's needs of security, there's needs of contribution. So when we're behaving in these chaotic ways, we're fundamentally feeding one of these needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that need could be the need of uncertainty. There's this joy and drama. What Look at the fucking entertainment industry. It's one of the biggest $1 billion mind
Yeah.
drawing industries. It's feeding the need of uncertainty, that drama, that, oh, what's going to happen next. And
Mm-hmm.
consequently, relationships, they struggle with this because they try to fulfill that need in a very lower vibratory state. Whereas you can feel
Mm-hmm.
that need for uncertainty in many other ways. Go jump off a fucking plane in a parachute or some shit. Like, that's pretty uncertain, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you don't have the money, go to a new park, go to a new area in the city. Like, if you're an adrenaline junkie, you know what I mean. You get creative about it, man. Like, there's so many different
Yeah.
ways to do it. But that Messiah, coming back to that Messiah complex thing, I think the Messiah complex is really a problem if the person thinks that they are the one with the
Mm-hmm.
message, and there is no one else's message on the planet that will triumph their message. I
Mm-hmm.
think more or less, more healthy Messiah complex would be, okay, I have a message that is important, and a lot of people can benefit from this shit, but it's not the one on the top. And
No.
maybe in that domain, yeah, you can be a prophet, whatever you want to
Mm-hmm.
call that psychic energy of what a prophet is.
Yeah.
I mean, what is a prophet?
The the confluence of having the Messiah complex most commonly being referred to as, I am the second coming of Christ. And inside of that religion, one of the reasons that I do not like Christianity, and keep in mind, this is coming from somebody who grew up Catholic, and I was an altar boy, and I, did the thing and
The boy,
rang the
no way.
bells and shit. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dude,
Um,
that's crazy.
the
I
the
got a
reason
story for
why
you
I don't like
after
that,
this.
what's that? Okay, cool. I'm looking forward to hearing it. But the reason that I don't like it is because, like, inside of the Bible, inside of some of the scripture, it talks about the one God, right? The one God. But like you go to you turn to some of the Norse lore, where there's Odin, Loki, Thor, Freya, and like all this myriad of other deities, and the Jotnar, and it has like there's multiple gods. There's not just
Pantheism,
one,
isn't it?
and they all have their their attributes, and their strengths and their weaknesses, and where they're
Mm.
naive, and all these kinds of things. And I tend to like that a lot more than there's just one God, and one God who specifically wants to bring you to your knees for prayer. I don't
Yeah,
Anyway, I
yeah.
don't want to get too carried away in that, but it's like I think those kinds of religions are the things that actually foster, because like those stories get told to us when we're very young,
Mm.
and they get embedded in that subconscious and unconscious realm at a very early age. And that, in order, when you're going through a process of maturation, like you have to establish like where are the boundaries, and I got to listen to mommy and daddy in a to tell me like what the hell's going on. They're the grown-ups, you know. I've looked at my parents like they know what's going on. The grown-ups are understand what's going on. And I'm sure Maya does that with you.
Yeah, yeah.
And you know what I mean? And so that's a very, and that happens at a very early stage of development. And I think when that gets triggered, it's like, you know, because like one of the things that happens, especially in deep psychedelic states, is people can relive like traumatic experiences. And inside of the holistic healing model, a lot of the times physical illnesses result from deep trauma, unpleasant memories, or if you want to call it like childhood misadventure that led to like a condition later in life, like maybe lung cancer if you've never smoked, or you know, yada yada yada. So a lot of the times these in these psychedelic states, these deep spiritual moments, it's like the medicine is intelligent and it knows how to dig into where a particular illness is manifesting. And so it might swim around some of the unconscious or subconscious realms and be able to tap into that little memory. And that's potentially where, now this is not like it's going to be 100% accurate, right? And it's just my how I'm trying to conceptualize it. It's like tapping into a specific memory of something that happened in and around that time at a developmental phase in childhood, where
Mm.
potentially that religious inclination was actually like placed. And as you know, when you touch one neuron, you're touching a whole host of like other neurons, just to break things, to try and take things into like a materialistic worldview. And so what is that neuron tied to? Well, this is like where the child's personality started to develop, and maybe that has an association with when all of those ideas were being put in there by the parents or from other influences at the same time. And so that could be a potential explanation, you know, as well as like the traumatic memories that are associated with some of those other connections. I'm trying to be very like, I don't know, I'm not a scientist, by the way, so you can take it for what it's
I
worth,
can tell.
but that's just
I you know, as you're saying this, what's coming up in me is the relationship to God. And I feel as kids at a very young age, I mean, they see their parents as God, right?
hmm
You look
absolutely.
at, like, if you want a physical, tangible example of what a God is, it's someone that creates you. And your mother is creating you out of thin air, literally creating you and bringing you onto the planet. But it's like, where's the acknowledgement for the mother as a goddess? She's there, like she's down the fucking street. You can knock on her door. Like, she actually brought you into this world. And then as we're growing up as kids, we look at these adults as literally gods. Like, they feed us, they clothe us, they feed us, give us all of our needs, they shape our
Yeah, they give us
psychology,
knowledge.
knowledge. They literally are gods. So people generally that, you know, struggle with their relationship with God, I like to trace them back into their childhood, right? And where they had a negative relationship with either the mother figure or the father figure.
hmm
And you can very easily sort of, it's a very easy practice, just a few questions and shit. But if the father's abandoned the child as a kid, as a very young age, you know, it doesn't have to be physically, it could be emotionally. The child will be very hesitant when he grows up. He'll be like, I don't know, God maybe exists, maybe he's not there. I don't know, you know, like, because that father is fundamentally a link to the divine at that point for the kid. He is
hmm
holding space for that child to experience the world around it and to know that it's safe. Even, you know, that child could be having divine experiences. Maybe that child's born with, you know, already a very expanded consciousness that's not grounded in the body just yet. It's floating around. And that consciousness could be exploring other realms. If the father is a very dominant, controlling, you know, full on just, hey, my way or the highway, the kid starts shutting off those domains. The disconnection comes from
Yeah.
God. So there's this very interesting study that I was actually reading called Modulation of DNA Confirmation by Heart Focused Intention by Dr.
Oh wow.
Uh, Roland McCratty. And so interesting, man, because what they pretty much did was they did double blind studies, and they got a group of people in a room, and they told them, look, you've been trained for a specific period to do heart focused breathing. And we want you to direct that attention towards that attention and intention towards DNA. There was this DNA in a cell culture. And the results of the study show that just through their intention alone, they were able to denature and renature the DNA, meaning that they were able to unwind it and wind it back up just with the intention alone. Now it gets even more crazier is that they added more variables into the study. They were like, all right, so this is the DNA. We want you to denature 2 of the strands of DNA and leave the other one. And simultaneously, through their attention and intention, they were able to do that. So it's like, fundamentally, we're already affecting our DNA.
Oh yeah.
That's
Without a
pretty
doubt, man.
godlike.
I mean, yeah. And I mean, we are kind of the gods of our own experience, if you want to put it that way. And so like with every thought, every emotion, every little micro detail, just like the DNA and how micro it is, it can have effects on how that thing expresses itself. Right. And yeah, that sounds like a phenomenal study. I'm glad that they're actually like tying in some science with it as well to kind of confirm that. But I mean, essentially, one of the interesting things about shamanic practice and philosophy is that like science is basically just playing catch up with what has already been known to people who, indigenous people and people who are practices of ancient knowledge for since time immemorial, right? So, but it's in a societal model where we worship science, essentially it's not true unless it's confirmed by science. It's like we need to be able to have things that confirm that objectively in order to be able to bridge that gap appropriately, because there's some people that are just too far gone to be able to like embrace any sort of spiritual aspect and stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like I've had plenty of amazing conversations with people who are atheists as well, and I think there's something to be gained from each of those worldviews, but from a personality standpoint, it just doesn't completely resonate with me just based on my experience. So yeah.
Talking about religion, I went for a run the other day, bro, and I was running around the city, and I really badly needed to go to the toilet. And I was just looking around for like, some place to go, and I couldn't find anyone. And I saw this church, and I was like, you know what, I'll go in there real quick and then I'll come back out. And I go into this church and I go to the toilet, use it very respectfully. And on the way out, it was like Sunday sermon or something. And I was like, you know what? I'm here. I want to pay my respects. I'll go sit down. I'll just see how they conduct things. I've barely ever been to a church. And I sit down, and beautiful building, magnificent art and the structure. And these guys, man, they're like, their architecture is something else. Like you feel like there was something, some sort of holy connection to some divine essence. And I'm sitting there, and the priest starts coming from the back, and he's wearing this massive robe, carrying the scepter, of like Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's walking through, and he goes to the main counter, the main stage, and starts opening the sermon, and everyone starts singing the song. They started playing the organ, and they start singing the song. They're like, Father, please forgive us for our sins. And I started singing along with it. And then after a while, I just felt this hell guilty feeling come up in me. And I was like, the fuck? I just got here. I didn't do shit. You know what I mean? Like, what are you trying to, what sin did I do? What sin did I commit? And I was just like, nah, man, like, it's been like 3,000 years. Like, you've got the forgiveness already. Like, chill the fuck out. Like, just move to the next level now. And with all due respect, I was feeling these emotions coming up in me. And I was like, nah, I don't want to do this. Like, I shouldn't have to recite this thing. And I just left very respectfully. I was like, look, I gotta go, and I'm out. Thank you very much. And
Yeah.
it feels like I'm back in the religion now, and maybe I am, and I'm all right with that. You know what? Because it's my experience with it. So, fuck you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely, man.
Yeah.
I don't really want to sit here and bash all these like religions and stuff, because I know it offers people like a structure to be able to rely on about having divinity on your side or something like that. But what you were mentioning about like with the guilt and leveraging emotions against you to be able to gain favor, whether it's like paying the church or doing things in the name of the church, is
Yeah. I saw the
another
bucket rolling
aspect of
around.
sorcery. Yeah, yeah.
The tip bucket is rolling around. I was
Yeah,
like, oh
yeah, yeah.
shit. It's coming.
Yeah. You feeling guilty yet? Okay, no. Okay, I'll come back a little bit later. But it's like, yeah. Um,
Yeah. Cool.
you know what I'm saying.
Final question. You can give your 15-year-old self one bit of advice. You can go into a time machine and you can go back to Brycito when he was 15
Mhm.
and be like, hey, I want to tell you something. With the knowledge that you have now, what do you tell him?
Don't be afraid to make mistakes.
Mm.
Yeah. Because when I was 13 or 14, I was in Canada. We say, according to my girlfriend, she's from the States. If I say grade 8, she likes to say 8th grade. She's like, that's so stupid. Anyway, when I was in grade 8, I was voted the nicest kid in my class, and that sounds like a good award to have
Possess.
achieved. But the truth is, I was actually deeply embarrassed by getting that, and I'm even more embarrassed now about it. I mean, not like now, it's like the past is the past and it's like whatever. I've had to do a lot of, and one of the reasons that I was so nice was because I didn't like conflict, and I didn't like, you know, stir in the pot to get like emotional reactions from people or yada yada yada. And it made me really kind of resentful. You hear about these like nice guys who have this like other kind of side to them, like that. I don't know if you know who Gian Gomeshi is over in Canada, who's like a radio host. He had this very nice voice, and he sounds like a nice guy. And the dude gets busted like beating the fuck out of women, like in a bunch of different ways and shit. And it's like, yeah, that's kind of what goes on in the mind of like a nice guy kind of personality. And I've kind of been embracing like being a dick and being authentic, and not necessarily being a dick, but being authentic. And then some people are going to perceive that as you being a dick, you know? So I'll
That's fine.
swear,
Yeah.
I'll say what's on my mind, but I'll also be transparent about the fact of like where I am in my age and that I don't have everything figured out. So it's like, what you see is what you get. And if you don't like it, it's like, again, you can change the channel. So just embracing that. I wish I had done it sooner, but I mean, there's no point in trying to go back to the past that you can't change. I'm actually living a changed past right now in this moment where past, present, and future are all simultaneously happening at the same time. It's a good way of kind of like through your day, kind of going through like a conscious meditation without just like
Mm.
sitting there in stillness. It's like understanding that all of that is happening together. And that's probably another way that you could actually alter your DNA, is understanding that, or trying to integrate like a model that's similar to that, understanding that your ancestors are actually here at the same time, and that, you know, the things that
True.
happen in your past like don't define you. It's like you want to change your DNA, man. It's like, hey, this is the kind of like consciousness workout that I think would benefit a lot of people, right? But yeah, I mean, because I was really nice, I didn't speak my mind. There were some things that I maybe should have said to people who were trying to. I'm trying to think of like specific examples, but I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now. But basically, I didn't want to ever like ruffle anybody's feathers or whatever like that. But the truth is like I did, but it was just not when the opportunity was appropriate, right? I would fester and I would get resentful and I would get like all these negative mind states. Um, so I wish I just kind of like, you know, spoke it right then and there and kind of acted like you know, the ducks when they run into like a bit of a conflict with each other, and they quickly, speaking of David Attenborough, and they just, you know, they want to kind of fuck each other up a little bit, but they don't want to like get hurt, and so they go in front of each other and they just get all that aggression out right there, and they flap their wings, and then they just go their other ways. And I would, you know, in my case, I was like a duck that who was getting his wings flapped at, but I would just sit there and just, and then it's not good to hold on to that type of it ends up that type of energy ends up being very toxic in the long run. So understanding that you have intake and you have expulsion, just the way the same way you eat food and you take a shit, you have to do that with your energy, with your emotion, with the other aspects of your being. So I wish I could go back. If I was 15, I would go back and say, just don't be afraid to be you, essentially. You
I love that. I think that's
know?
beautiful. And a lot of people would benefit from hearing that, especially the way that you
Yeah.
articulated it in very simplistic terms, but then brought it into a much more, real life practical element of what it does, how it does it. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you.
We got a little symphony orchestra in the back, like, excellent, sir, marvelous.
How about some death metal?
I've been getting into death metal recently quite a lot.
Oh, yeah, who are you listening
I
to?
just I go on YouTube, I type in heavy death metal and whatever comes up. I'm not at that point where it's like specific bands and stuff.
Okay.
But I'm getting it now. I'm getting it. A lot of my whole
Cool.
childhood, I judged it. I was like, what the fuck? People are crazy,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
and that. Like, what's this shit? But now it's like, no, it's a state of mind. It's a state of being that
Yeah.
yeah. When I'm cruising around the hills in the city, I don't listen to it. But when I'm planning to take over the world, when I'm planning to take over, you know what I mean? Like the fucking that's when the death metal comes on.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the perfect soundtrack for it, I guess. But yeah,
Yeah,
I like
states,
it just because it
moments.
just makes me like, it's motivation for, you don't need steroids if you're into working out if you got death metal in my mind.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Awesome, man. It's been absolutely excellent having a chat with you, having you on the show. And I feel like a
the
lot of
same to you,
people are
my
going to
friend.
benefit from your wisdom, your experience, and your knowledge. And how do people connect with you? How do they find you?
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, let's see. I've just set up a YouTube channel that's called
My man.
Dornan. It's just like an homage to my ancestors from Sweden. It's spelled D-A. It's like a Swedish A, the A with the little O on top. DARNAN. That's just where, that's basically just a platform on YouTube and BitChute and it's like some other online video platforms where I just kind of elaborate on some of the things that I've learned in passing from like doing this work uh,
Yep.
and then if you want to connect with us, our website is almost done for uh, the Down to Earth site. And if you wanted to come here and participate in participate with sacred medicinal plants, if you want to learn anything like Mao Shan or Qigong alongside of it while getting like a healthy serving of grounded support, it's down to earth aya.com, and that should be up soon.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And you got a Patreon also, I believe?
I've got a Patreon for the Dornan page. Yeah. I'm
Okay.
just kind of, it's still in its infancy. So I'm trying to figure out how to get the tiers to a point where they're viable. So it's still something that I'm sorting through, but hopefully by the time this comes out, it'll be sorted.
All right. Awesome. Guys, I'll drop a little message on the bottom. So like and subscribe and stay in tune. Bryce, thank you so much for coming on, man.